Welcome to the Workology podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrill, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
Even before the pandemic, it was a challenge to shop and learn about HR technology and services. COVID has thrown another wrinkle into things, even with conferences and events maybe opening up in the near future. At Workology, we reach 800,000, yes, you heard me right, 800,000 HR and workplace leaders every single month with our newsletter, podcast, and online resources at Workology.com. I've been getting requests from many of you asking for ways to connect with different companies that will give you the opportunity to research the organization and learn about them before signing up for a demo or answering your phone. This interview is part of a series called HR Tech Insights for the Workology podcast. It's sponsored by Upskill HR and ACE the HR exam. It's an opportunity for you, the HR leader, to quickly learn about different companies, their solutions, the company sizes and verticals they serve, and a quick case study for the problems they solve. Think of it like walking the expo floor, but without the free swag and cocktails. I miss those too. The good news is that there's no travel or expense involved. You can listen to the Workology podcast wherever and whenever you want. Each episode of HR Tech Insights series features 3 7 to 10 minute interviews with different HR tech and service providers. Let's get started with this episode, shall we? Our first interview on this episode of HR Tech Insights is with Markellos Diorinos. He says that great companies are made of great people. When he realized that existing talent management tools provide lots of data, but often no actionable intelligence, Markellos co-founded Brink to do just that, support HR practitioners and hiring managers with actionable data so that they can make better, faster, and more diverse hiring decisions, promoting and with internal talent mobility. Hi, Markellos, and welcome to the Workology podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about Brink and the problem you solve for human capital leaders?
Thank you so much for having me, Jessica. It's a pleasure to be here. And you know what? Happens to be my favorite subject. So I'll be happy to answer that one. We started by looking at HR decisions, and this ends up being one of the most important things in a company, right? A company is made of nothing but great people. And you have to make all those decisions in managing talent, whether it is hiring new people or it is about internal mobility, career development, all those things. And we found that both HR professionals and managers are struggling because they have to make all these decisions based on subjective data. And that's especially apparent in hiring, where the context and the knowledge about people is very, very low. So what we saw was that amazing talent was being overlooked. Unconscious biases were slipping through the cracks. And we wouldn't have the optimal hiring. We don't have the proper talent nurturing. So the usual solution to that is what? We're in a data-driven society. It's throw data to the problem. So let's get more resumes, let's get LinkedIn, let's process this all automatically, let's do assessments, this and that. And what ended up happening is that you'd have a lot of what we like to think of as an analysis paralysis scenario. Too much data, you'd have tons and tons of data for each candidate, but no actionable way to understand which of those data actually contributes to long-term success, whether it is in hiring or anywhere else. And this was the driving force behind us creating Brink. We wanted to help HR practitioners, managers, and hiring managers alike to first define what they want to achieve, then help them measure what it is that they need with objective data, and last but definitely not least, help them see comparative results that make sense. Data, that's not just data, that's real intelligence. That's why, by the way, we like to say that we're in talent intelligence business, not in just the data or the assessment or this or that. Intelligence that helps them make better decisions. And that's what we're all about.
Everybody needs data to be able to make great hiring decisions, and they need to be able to do it quickly. But first, they need to understand what they want before they can even set out to get there. So I love that is really the direction that you guys are moving and going towards with Brick. I wanted to ask you about if there was a company size or vertical that you find yourself helping customers in most.
That's a lovely question. And the answer is a bit complex. Let me explain. We see all kinds of companies come to us, sometimes with different motivations. So what's been very high recently has been companies coming to us because of diversity. They know that they have a hiring process that is biased. They want to do better. They feel that they owe it to the company, to the candidates, to the world, if you like, to do a better job at having an equitable process. And they're saying, I can't have an equitable process where everything is judged by a person. I need to set some objective criteria that I can stand behind, meaning not just I'm going to hire blonde people. That's not a great criteria. I'm going to hire people who have this and this and that, because these are the things that relate to job performance. And then I'm going to do a blind screening in the sense that I'm going to screen people for prerequisites, because I need them to have, I don't know, a CCPA certification or whatever, and for their job fit. That has worked amazingly. What this kind of customers are saying is that they're excited. They're excited at the speed, at the ease of use, at all of those things. But mostly what they find most compelling is that they end up looking at and eventually hiring talent that under normal circumstances they would have overlooked. They end up with the person who scores high in whatever it is that they need, and they said, look at this resume. I wouldn't have had a second look at this person. And that's where we hit the target with diversity. When we help you look for people for what they can do, not for what they are or where they come from. But that's just one set of customers. There are other customers who come and say, I need to hire for performance. And that's a typical reasoning behind people who hire for sales teams. And they say, performance, call centers, same thing. So then they again need to hire for what's going to make people successful. People who hire in volume, a different category, and that's mostly your call centers and other high churn roles. How can I tell who's the best? And what's been increasingly more common is people who want to hire for culture add. People have started to realize that it's not enough that someone can do the job. I'm looking for, say, a developer. Everybody wants a developer. Everybody wants to hire a developer. People came to realize that the developer who's going to be successful at Google is different than the developer who's going to be successful at Pfizer, is different than the developer who's going to be successful at Brick. They all have the same skills on paper. They all can do the same thing, but there are different cultures and different people are going to be successful in different environments. So that's kind of a summing up, the kind of different areas that people come and problems that they solve. And that has an impact into the customers. The bulk of our customers really comes from what we like to think as the upper SMB maybe. So these are organizations that have maybe from 250 to 5,000 employees, and they're growing fast. They need to bring the right people. They care about the growth. They cannot afford to mishire. So they want to make sure that every person that they do is a real net addition to their workforce and is going to take them forward. Of course, we have some bigger customers. We have customers like, I don't know, the company formerly known as Ernst & Young, now known as EY, and Pepsi. And these are large enterprises who have early talent programs, and they have tons and tons of consultants, lots of hiring, quality and quantity together. We have some smaller customers, and we love to support our smaller customers. We have a special program for startups, heavily discounted, because we think that no one hurts more from mishiring than startups. And we see it with ourselves. If we hire the wrong person, it's going to be a huge impact to our bottom line, a huge impact to our growth. So, we have the smaller customers like Blinklist and Cargo One. These are the kind of customers who are still, below 200 people. Sometimes it's just 10 or 20, and they're looking to hire talent. And the very interesting niche that is different than what we expected, and we didn't quite set out for that, is recruiters. About a third of our total customers are recruiters that has developed in the past couple of years, because there's no one who understands the value of proper hiring, no one who understands the value of objective data and decision making, no one who understands the value of being able to compare candidates and talk about candidates based on objective data so that they can sell their candidates to customers more than recruiters. And that's why we love working with them. They're the guys who, everybody else is a cost center. Recruiters are really earning dollars out of this. And they love what we offer. They jump to it, and it helps them in their daily work.
This is all awesome. Do you have a specific case study, maybe from one of these companies, large or small, that you can kind of walk us through and how you really made an impact?
I have a customer that we've been working really closely with, and I like him as an example. We haven't published the case study, so I can't disclose the name yet, but I'll tell you what this company does, and it's kind of a recruiter, I guess. They're hiring, training, and then placing SDRs. And if you've noticed, SDRs is one of the probably highest sought expertises nowadays. Every company that does SaaS, everybody who sells, they need to have sales development representatives, business development representatives, whatever you call them. There are people who are going to do their lead generation, bring in the lead so that their sales team can do it. And it's also one of the interesting cases because there's no training for SDRs, right? There is no university of SDRs. There is no SDR or sales degree for that matters. And the typical indicators that we look for, which would be, this person has done the job before, or this person has studied this item. These simply don't exist. So do I need to hire my SDRs out of Harvard? Probably not. Plus, I wouldn't be able to afford them. So there goes your good schools as well. You can't rely on that. What makes a good SDR? And that was the question that our customer asked us. And they said, we hire these people, we bring them in I believe it is a 3 or 4 week training program, and half of them live through the program. They just can't cope. They realize that this role is not for them. And then from the people that we do place, we have significant attrition after 6 months because we are not always getting the right people, even if they make it through the training. And this is where we went in. We went in with a theoretical profile. And this is a caveat that you see many times with other approaches. People like to benchmark all the time. But benchmarking is inherently biased. If I benchmark, the people who present Workology podcasts, it's going to be a very specific set of people. That doesn't mean that everybody who would be successful in that role is going to look like that. So we always want to fall back into theories from organizational psychology that tell us what are the most probable things that will make someone successful in a role and take those. We do the usual benchmarking, but it's mostly a verification exercise for that, just to see that the people who are already in a position mostly exhibit the same traits as we'd expect them to, and not the vice versa. We're not going to define the profile based on that. So we defined with them a profile, and we started doing the new cohorts, and they were being pre-selected by Brick. They were able to explore the strengths and weaknesses of each candidate based on the results that we told them. And well, anybody who has recruited knows that there is no such thing as a perfect candidate. I wish there was. You always have to compromise. Knowing what you compromise on gives you a lot more insight into how you can set people for success. And that's what we've been doing. They've been working people through that. They've been making sure that the right people go in and then placing those people. The question is always what kind of results you can get out of this. And well, I'm not sure I'm being objective here, but the results are nothing short of amazing. What our customer has seen is that their training attrition, which was quite high, has been reduced to less than half. Most of the people who are going in now are coming out because the right kind of people are going in. It's not because they're better or they're worse. It's not that they're more intelligent per se. And all our assessments are cognitive and personality. Cognitive never wins. Cognitive alone is not going to get you anywhere. It's a combination of the two that makes people successful. And more people survive through the training. And we're now starting to have the first early data. We've closed the first couple of 6-month cycles. And we see also a significant reduction in attrition. People who have been placed, they're still at their jobs after 6 months. And these are all wins. These are the kind of metrics that as a recruiting professional, as a hiring manager, this is what I want to achieve. I want to have better people faster, who are going to stay with me longer, and are going to be more productive. And we can provide all of that.
This is amazing. I love the reduction in turnover. I think everybody's shaking their heads right now saying, yes, this makes sense. And this is what we want, not to mention potentially increased productivity and the right people in the organization that fit the needs of the organization. Like it's a perfect match, which is a win, not just for the employer, but also for that candidate too.
The most precious commodity that one has is talent. And you spend so much money in sourcing talent, so much effort, you know how it is. So we don't feel good about throwing away good talent. We'll do everything in our power to help you make the most of the talent that you've attracted.
Markellos, I know that like our listeners, I think, they would love to learn more about the work that you are doing at Brick. Where can people go to connect with you and Brick in terms of checking out to learn more and having a conversation with you and the sales team?
Our website is at www.brick.com. Brick is, of course, spelled differently because why make it easy? So Brick is now BRYQ. And there's a little story behind it that we do provide the building block of companies, which is people and not bricks. But we kind of like the analogy because it's so fundamental to get the right people. So do go ahead and visit brick.com and you'll find our schedule a demo. As I said, some of our customers are really small and startups. We even have a self-starter program. People can say, hey, I like this. I don't want to talk to anyone. Let me give it a shot. And we have a free trial. People can go in, sign up, try it, send candidates, assess them, see the results that come back. This is all awesome stuff that's available for them. And it's merely a few clicks away.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Markellos, for taking the time to chat with us today.
The pleasure was all mine, Jessica. Hope we talk again soon.
Our next interview is with Prem Kumar. He is the Humanly.io co-founder and CEO. Prem's mission is to empower hiring teams and candidates through innovative technology, commitment, and fairness. Y Combinator, Microsoft, and Tiny Pulse alum. He is a Techstars and Venture Out mentor and one of the top 100 HR influencers. Hi, Prem. Welcome to the Workology podcast. Can you tell us a little bit more about Humanly.io and the problem you solve for human capital leaders?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jessica. So we're in the talent acquisition space. We're focused on helping employers have better, more equitable and efficient conversations with their job candidates. So the problem we're solving, one is around time savings. So can we automate some of the repetitive touch points that happen around the employment lifecycle and hiring? And then secondly, we feel this will always be a human-driven process. So in addition to automation, we also help humans have more efficient and equitable conversations with candidates, such as looking at how fast they're talking. Are they bringing up their company values? Are they treating candidates fairly and equitably? So yeah, those are the two problems we're solving around time savings and one around quality.
And these are definitely things that are on the minds of TA leaders right now, quality, and then how quickly can we get these people through the process, the right people, and extend them an offer and get them started at our organization.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you, what company size and or vertical are you finding yourself helping most customers in?
Yeah, so generally, as I get to that answer, generally we're targeting high volume entry to mid-level roles. So entry-level support, sales, where you're getting hundreds of resumes, you're bombarded by resumes. It's hard to get to everyone. We see a lot of these roles in tech, in healthcare is another vertical for us, as well as professional services. We are, as COVID kind of dissipates a little bit, we're also beginning to move more into retail and restaurants. Generally, we work with companies that are mid-size. We're now moving deeper into the enterprise.
Awesome. Do you have a recent case study or an example of how you've helped customers with quality of hiring and time to fill?
Yeah, absolutely. So one kind of common scenario for us is university and campus recruiting. So we have a customer in Seattle, large accounting firm, and 2 times a year as they were doing campus recruiting, they would get during that 3-month period about 4,000 to 5,000 applicants, and it was very difficult to get to all those candidates. Even the strong ones would have to wait, a week before they can hop on the phone with a person And wasn't just about them screening the candidates, but educating the candidates and allowing them to screen the company. So we helped reduce time to hire by kind of short circuiting that first touch. So instead of waiting a week, all of the 4,000 candidates after applying are taken into a chat with Humanly. This is an automated chat that answers their questions, screens them, and then we're able to schedule them. From the quality side, it's a better experience because you can do it in 24 hours. You can get your questions answered as a candidate. So we did also measure candidate experience in kind of that first touch moment, and got some pretty good results. I think we average about a 4.8 out of 5 from the candidate standpoint.
That's fantastic. And I know my background's high volume recruiting, so you're speaking my language here. And I love that you're able to, it's not just about qualifying the candidate, but it's about answering those questions so they can make sure that the employer and this position is the right fit for them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Can you tell me some maybe specific ways that you have impacted the business for your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned a little bit about the time savings, but on the quality side, so once you've gone through our initial screening, you're going into an interview as a candidate, and we feel those should continue to be human driven. So a lot of those first interviews for the roles we're targeting happen over Zoom, they happen over Microsoft Teams. So we have our assistant invited to those meetings. It's an automated AI assistant, and it'll start to look at how is the hiring team treating the candidate. And with one of our customers, we found, this is obviously a horrible thing, but they were able to correct it. We found that junior female candidates for IT positions were literally getting 3 to 4 minutes less to speak in their interviews than their male counterparts. So we're able to measure interruptions, we're able to measure patience. So if there's a pause in the conversation, are you jumping in and talking over the candidate or letting them finish? So they were able to identify that this was happening, do some better training around it, and they've seen things improving.
Wow, and it's not something that, like, as a TA leader, I would ever sit down and sit through a bunch of interviews and measure it that way. So you're providing a really valuable resource and insights that they wouldn't be getting anywhere else in any other way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this conversation has went by lightning fast. I loved what we've been talking about, and I know I want to learn more, and our listeners do too. Where can they go to learn more about you and the work that you're doing at humanly.io?
Absolutely. So they can, go to our website at humanly.io. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. You can email me as well at prem@humanly.io. And we have a Twitter account at humanlyhr as well.
You are listening to the Workology podcast, sponsored by Upskill HR and Ace the HR exam. This episode is part of our HR Tech Insights series, where we connect you with 3 different HR tech and/or service providers in a single episode. Personal and professional development is essential for successful HR leaders. Join Upskill HR to access live training, community, and over 100 on-demand courses for the dynamic leader. HR research credits available. Visit upskillhr.com for more. My name is Jessica Miller-Merrill. Thank you for joining us. Let's get back to it. Our final interview in this episode of the HR Tech Insights podcast series is with Rob Catalano. He's the Chief Engagement Officer and co-founder at WorkTango. He's a top 100 global employee engagement influencer and has 18 years of advising organizations on employee engagement and building HR technology companies. Hi, Rob. Welcome to the Workology podcast. Can you tell me a little bit about WorkTango and the problem you solve for human capital leaders?
Sure, absolutely. First off, thanks for having me here. But in terms of starting with the problem, when companies want to understand the sentiment of their employees, right, what they've been doing for the last 100 years, and literally this started 100 years ago, was the employee engagement survey. And unfortunately, it's been a very rigid process, not a great experience. It's only a moment in time. And organizations were still conducting these processes, even though it wasn't really providing them a lot of value. So what we're solving for human capital is, well, how do we make it easier for HR and leadership and organizations to understand employee sentiment? And we look at it in a couple of ways. First is, well, how do you understand employee sentiment beyond employee engagement? So everything across the employee lifecycle, whether it's change in organizational change, a lot of that happened in the last year and a half, onboarding exit surveys, diversity, equity, inclusion, really just trying to understand across a broader scale, but also getting that data to companies and HR in real time. So gone are the days of waiting 3 months to get insights from an employee engagement survey. How do you serve that insight in real time, any way you want to slice it to anyone you want to give it to? It's very common for our customers to not only have the data in HR where they're a filter, but give it to tens, hundreds, thousands of leaders to understand sentiment for their specific respective teams or departments. But the other big problem that we help solve is, well, how do you act on that data? And if you can be quicker at getting that insights to HR, you can you take that data analysis piece out of it. The system helps companies recommend actions, track actions, and keep leaders more accountable. So kind of high level, that's what Worktango is all about.
Awesome. Well, I feel like the employee engagement sort of conversation is one that we have been having since really the creation of work. How do we keep people happy? How do we understand what they want, and how do we start that conversation and dialogue? I wanted to ask you, what company size and or vertical do you find yourself helping customers in the most?
It's funny, I get this question a lot, and it's kind of a half tongue-in-cheek answer, but my answer is companies that care. It's actually interesting where if I look through all of the different types of companies we work with, whether it's large retailers, the Brooklyn Nets, law firms, tech companies, some are 100 companies or 100 employees, some are 50,000 employees. I think, what I find is we get the privilege of working companies that want to understand sentiment of their employees. But that being said, I'll try to answer your question a little more specifically. The ones that I guess really stand out are kind of size, kind of the mid-size organizations, let's say 1,000 to 10,000 employees. And typically what we're seeing bubble up a lot is technology organizations, obviously with a lot of agility in their organization. They need to check in and understand employee sentiment, a lot more frequently than once a year. And another interesting one that's been really growing for us is in the retail world. Typically, it's been challenging to understand employee sentiment when they're not sitting in front of computers. But with good technology and approach, you can understand again what employees are thinking and feeling at any point, across how their flow of work rolls, even if they're again not in front of technology. So those are a couple of the industries and verticals and sizes that we work the most with.
Awesome. And I love your first answer, by the way, companies that care, because there are not a lot. Unfortunately, some companies don't care, and they would just rather be in denial and not have access to information and resources to help make informed decisions. Another question I wanted to ask you is if you had a recent case study or example of how you've helped your customers that you could maybe share with us.
Yeah, so you just mentioned it's important to really listen to your employees and what's happening. And one of the examples that come to mind is with a recent company that we were working with, and it was all around mergers and acquisitions. So if you think around change and how a world might really be very different for an employee that's either being acquired or changing their world, and there's a lot of uncertainty that goes with that space. And when you think about that experience, we've worked with some companies where we saw people's results around feeling secure in their current position, or understanding what their acquisition will mean for their role, literally increasing anywhere between 30 and kind of 60% when it comes to those types of questions in a very short period of time. So when I think about that change that's happening and needing to understand it to be able to, again, be agile in building a better experience for employees, that M&A example is one that really comes up as a very specific one. But what I think is even more holistic, as even just to your point of a recent case study, look at what happens with COVID, right? The requirement for remote work, back to work, just the ability to navigate through, how to handle that, even as an HR leader. Like, let's be honest, there's no manual on how to do this, right? We're all writing the book together, and many of our customers have been really using this concept of understanding employee voice, again, very frequently, to help them understand what's working and what's not in this new environment.
Do you have, or can you share with us a specific way that you have impacted the business? And I'm thinking about maybe how you can tie the work that you've done at Worktango directly to an HR metric to kind of tell the story.
Yeah, so a very specific one is actually, I have a really top of mind because it was a case study that our organization just published, was basically seeing two major changes. One was in employee net promoter score from 37 to 60 in literally a year and a half. But I think what's really exciting about that was that's a company that was growing like crazy, was getting acquired in the process through COVID and all the changes happening from remote work. But what they were doing is they were listening to their employees. They were focusing on more frequent than, again, once a quarter or once a year insights to understand that experience. So if we think about whether it's engagement index or, or ENPS as a score, many companies leverage in that world. That's one very specific example, and again, happy to share that case study with you. And the peripheral kind of metrics of that were other things around, learning and development, career growth, and other major factors that influence it as well.
I love that. And I appreciate you being willing to share, because employee engagement is sort of, really hard to pin down on how it impacts the larger business. So any insights that we have as HR leaders to help tell the story to the executive teams, I think is incredibly important.
And what's interesting though, and what I find people are seeing a lot of value in, is this concept of engagement surveys or employee listening. Everyone gets so fixated on the measurement. And I'm not saying measurement is not important, right? It's an output of success and an understanding of how well we're doing or not. But in the spirit I keep talking about of understanding employee sentiment more frequently, or we call it actively listening to employees, it's not just about measuring through these types of surveys, for example. It's also understanding feedback from a diagnostic perspective. What's working? What isn't, right? What do you think about a certain idea or concept to inform better decision-making from an HR perspective? So this combination of measuring, like engagement indexes or NPS or other factors of engagement, combined with this diagnostic feedback from employees, is where I think rubber really hits the road and where the magic really happens.
Well, I know our listeners would love to learn more about the work that you are doing with WorkTango. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more about the company?
Yeah, so if it's the company, definitely worktango.com or all the major, the socials out there, we like to call it, whether it's on LinkedIn or so on. And even personally, whether it's I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I always love connecting with passionate HR folks and sharing, collectively sharing with each other wonderful things that are happening in the space. But, I guess online is awesome. Or I always love our phone number, 1-833-22-TANGO, right? Like, it takes two to tango. So we'll throw that in there.
I love that. That is making me laugh. LOL right now. Thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
I'm all about arming HR and workplace leaders with resources and information to help them support their organizations. That's why I do what I do. And that includes finding great HR tech and service providers. You can visit the show notes of this episode at Workology.com, where I'm including each person we've talked to's LinkedIn profile and their company information. Feel free to reach out to them directly and ask questions. Make sure you let them know that you heard about them on the Workology podcast. This episode is part of our HR Tech Insights series and is sponsored by Upskill HR and Ace the HR exam. This podcast is for the disruptive workplace leader who's tired of the status quo. My name is Jessica Miller-Merrill, and until next time, you can visit Workology.com to listen to all our Workology podcast episodes.